Prime Minister Narendra Modi and 72 ministers take oath as the NDA government swears for its third straight term. The new cabinet has 30 ministers, including 5 berths for key NDA allies. Portfolio allocation, however, is still awaited. Wall Street closes lower on Friday following a stronger than expected jobs report for May. This raises uncertainty over the timeline of the Fed's rate cut trajectory. Asian markets largely lower, the GIFT Nifty suggesting a lower start for the Indian market. Crude prices post a third straight week of losses, with Brent now trading under $80 a barrel. Gold prices slip over 3% on Friday after a strong jobs report for May sees Treasury yields surge. France set to go to polls as French President Emmanuel Macron calls for snap elections. The president, whose term is only set to end in 2027, said he will dissolve the French parliament after suffering a heavy defeat to Marine Le Pen's far-right National Rally Party in the European Union elections. Good morning in the Mumbai News Center. I'm Sonal Bhutra and you're watching Power Breakfast. Those were the top headlines. It's a fresh new week and we have a lot to talk about as well. But first up, as we always do, let's take a look at the Asian markets. Most of them are shut today. The Taiwanese index, the Hong Kong markets and the Chinese markets as well. So lesser markets which are trading in the Asian region today. However, the ones that are working today, they are largely in the red. Kospi is down 0.7%. We have Nikkei though, which is in the green. So it's a mixed picture right now as far as the Asian markets are concerned. The GIFT Nifty, that will come up for you on the screen because that is the one that will indicate the moves for our own markets. And it's a 44-point downtick that the GIFT Nifty is suggesting right now, indicating that maybe the gains that we saw on Friday and Thursday, there could be some profit booking on those levels. Moving on now, let's talk about the US markets because Wall Street ended Friday's trading session marginally lower despite a much hotter than expected employment report. The Dow lost 87 points, the S&P slipped 5 points, and the tech-heavy index Nasdaq shed nearly 40 points. For the week, all major indices ended higher, with S&P touching a fresh intraday record in midday trading. Shares of AI chipmaker stock Nvidia closed down on Friday but ended the week with 10% gains. Meme stock Roaring Kitty plunged nearly 40% after the video game retailer reported disappointing results for the quarter. Meme stock trader Keith Gill, famously known as the Roaring Kitty, also hosted a live stream on YouTube for the first time in 3 years in order to move the stock even more. Okay, like we just mentioned, the US economy added far more jobs than expected for the month of May, countering fears of a slowdown in the labor market. CNBC's Steve Lisman has more on the numbers and what it means for the Federal Reserve's policy path.
A much stronger than expected May U.S. jobs report, eliminating the last chances for a July rate cut from the Fed and making September a little more than a coin flip now. The market clinging, though, to the chance of 2 rate cuts this year, but now taking its confidence and moving it into November and December. Non-farm payrolls at 272,000 in May, blowing past the estimate of 190,000 and accelerating from the weaker number we got in April, which will revise down to 165,000. The unemployment rate did tick up to 4%, and that is from the weaker separate household survey. But average hourly wages, which creates a concern about inflation at the Federal Reserve, up double the prior month at 0.4% and ticking up the year over year back over 4% after we thought we were making progress when we got down below 4 in April, erasing that improvement from last month. What's also gone is the concern that gripped and actually helped the markets the past several weeks, which is that of a slowing economy. There was strong job growth in healthcare, up 68,000. That has been a persistent source of strength. The government came back after a weak April number to add 43,000 jobs in May. Leisure and hospitality, again, another big source of job growth in the economy, up by 42,000, and construction up by 21,000. At the same time, there's been this big divergence between the two surveys, the household and the payroll survey. A bit of a head scratcher. Total jobs ran together through most of 2021, but then they started to split, and the gap has gotten a lot wider now. Using a household series that corrects for differences in how the two surveys are put together, the gap is now the widest on record, which goes back to 1994, more than 4 million jobs difference. Over time, they are expected to come together, and the payroll survey is subject to revisions that could correct some of the differences, which would mean that payrolls now are weaker than they appear to be from the numbers that are currently being published. But right now, it's clear the interest rate market, it's taking the cue from the strength of the payroll survey and the belief that the Fed looks at these numbers and sees strong payrolls and little economic weakening that it was hoping for to support cutting rates later this year.
Okay, all right, that's all about US May jobs data. Let's also get in some reactions to the May jobs data from market experts and economists and listen in to what they think of the Fed's next move.
We were surprised in part because we thought that the spring hiring season, which expects a decent amount of jobs to be added, in the seasonal factors expect a decent number of jobs to be added, but actual hiring actually blew past that. And so, yeah, it was a surprise. Overall, it's a stronger than expected report, though if you look at the household survey, I think the takeaway is that we can add a lot of jobs and nevertheless have the unemployment rate go sideways or even a little bit higher. So the break-even pace of payroll growth is very high. I do think that has a lot to do with the strong immigration trends. Immigrants coming into the workforce, and we're rebalancing the labor market even with very strong payroll growth.
I think an important thing is next week, the Fed is going to put out new projections. And if you go back to March, they were projecting 3 rate cuts just. But you need a lot of people to change their mind at this stage to take that from 3 to 1. So I think it goes from 3 to 2. So I think what will happen is next week you're looking at the Fed saying 2 rate cuts. Well, that's sort of the upper end of what people are expecting anyway. So, you know, when I look at this jobs report, yeah, the payroll number was very strong, but it's really a mixed picture. The household survey is saying we lost 400,000 jobs. And honestly, these two reports are so far apart. I mean, one of them says we added 400,000 jobs in the last year. The other says we added, 2.8 million jobs in the last year. So one of them's wrong. And when I think the Fed's looking at this and saying, we really don't know exactly where we are here. So what's the best thing to do? Nothing. And I think that's what they'll do.
All right, that's some expert opinion coming in. Let's move on now. Rate jitters following the hotter than expected US jobs report weighed on European equities on Friday. The French CAC fell 38 points, the German DAX slipped 95 points, while the British FTSE closed with losses of about 40 points. Losses in the pan-European Stock 600 was led by a 3% drop in real estate stocks and a 1% drop in utilities. A day after the European Central Bank cut rates by 25 basis points, Germany's central bank governor said that the ECB is not in autopilot mode and will continue to act restrictively despite the rate cut. And European stock futures are also lower, while the euro is also under pressure after far-right parties made big gains in the European Union's parliamentary elections, giving stunning defeat to the bloc's two important leaders, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and French President Emmanuel Macron. So much so that the French president has immediately dissolved the French National Assembly and called for snap national elections. CNBC's Sylvia Amaro gets us up to speed with the details and what this means for the European Union.
The latest European elections have showed a strong support for far-right lawmakers. They could be going from having 49 seats at the European Parliament to potentially getting more than 60. Other right-wing groups are also seeing strong gains tonight. Ultimately, what we are getting from these results is a more fragmented European Parliament that is clearly leaning more towards the right. However, centrist parties told me tonight that they will be working together to make sure that the far right does not have a stronger influence in European policy making. Now, European elections, European-wide elections tend to be seen also as a referendum in national politics. And this is very clear tonight out of France, where the party of the president, Emmanuel Macron, lost quite a lot of support. And as a result, the French president called for a snap election for the French parliament. Let's see what will happen there in the coming weeks. However, some policy analysts are suggesting that what he is trying to do is basically bring forward a potentially victory of the far right ahead of the 2027 presidential election and making sure that he's showing to the French electorate that the far right politicians lack experience. Let's see what will happen in France, but from a European perspective, it is very clear that what we're getting tonight is potentially a more fragmented European Union where policy making will be harder and slower to get done. For CNBC Business News, I'm Sylvia Amaro in Brussels.
Okay, all right. From international news, let's talk about the big national story today. Narendra Modi was sworn in for a third consecutive term as India's Prime Minister, along with 72 ministers at the Rashtrapati Bhavan last evening. Narendra Modi has equaled the feat of Jawaharlal Nehru, who won 3 straight terms as India's first Prime Minister. The NDA will have 30 cabinet ministers, 5 ministers of state with independent charge, and 36 other ministers of state. Several council of ministers, including Rajnath Singh, Amit Shah, Nitin Gadkari, JP Nadda, Shivraj Singh Chauhan, Nirmala Sitharaman, S. Jaishankar, Piyush Goyal took oath. JDS leader H.D. Kumaraswamy, HM Secular Chief Jitan Ram Manji, JDU leader Rajiv Ranjan Singh, TDP's K. Ram Mohan Naidu, and LGP RV leader Chirag Paswan took oath as cabinet ministers. Each of these 5 allies got 1 cabinet berth each. The first meeting of the PM Modi's third cabinet is likely to be held this evening. Post the swearing-in ceremony of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, CNBC TV 18 Shireen Bhan spoke to industry experts Sunil Singhania and Atul Suri about what to expect from markets under PM Modi's third term.
Retail investors in India are making wealth out of the growth of India, which is a great sign. However, I think what has happened, obviously, as Atul mentioned, that Monday, actually just changed the complete perspective, and you had like a crazy move up. And maybe, what has happened over the week is a culmination of the disappointment of Tuesday. We are very confident that the third 5-year term would be a very transformative term in terms of GDP numbers actually coming out much better than what we are expecting. Already, we saw the March quarter numbers of 8.2% as far as the GDP is concerned. And I think that is very clearly reflected even in the stance of the foreign investors. Very sure they are also looking at opportunities to come in, which we already have started to see towards the end of last week. And that trend should also continue. And I think this is one space where India has huge, I would say, room to cover. And the other good thing is that we have a lot of, global institutions more than willing to support this by way of investments. So I think this is going to be a key focus area, whether it's roads, railways, all kinds of infrastructure, ports, airports, and, water. And you mentioned earlier about the rural thrust. I think a big thrust for rural will also be development of all these basic facilities for people in general.
Very, very important. Things may change, priorities may change a little bit on the social side, but as far as the markets go, as far as the whole, thrust to industrialization, liberalization, the thrust to the next, decade or the Amrit Kal, whatever, you find that the push would continue, and I think the markets would reward it. And apart from just India, Shireen, the important part is that even globally, things are pretty good. They're shaping up. The ECB has cut rates. So all in all, we are in a good environment. I do think that we would continue the up move. Yes, there must be a little shuffling around in the sectors and themes that may happen. But then after such a big an event, a little bit of rotation goes for the par. There's a sense that there is going to be much more rural push. And that's why you'll find that certain sectors that did very well in the last 2 or 3 days. First is autos. Autos really stand out because I think personally that sector was up 6 to 7%, if I'm not mistaken, for the week that went by. And there also you'll find that those auto stocks which have a rural bias did very well. A lot of them touched lifetime highs, even in this falling market. The second area that did very well was the whole consumption, the FMCG space. Again, a sector that's been a bit on the quieter side for the last few months, but there is a feel that rural consumption would spike up. IT, again, the third sector that's done well. And what would come under question is the runaway in some of the defense and railway stocks. Again, I don't think the trend is over. The trend is very large. I feel the bigger trend is still up. I still think there's a lot of opportunity and money to be made.
Okay, all right. It's time for a short break now. We'll tell you all about the global cues and the domestic cues and how these will impact our own markets in our Power Prep segment. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're still tuned into Power Breakfast. This is our Power Prep segment, and we have our research team joining in to tell you what the trade setup looks like, the stocks that are likely to be in the news, and the action from the F&O space as well. Hey guys, a very good morning to all of you. Hormaz, let me come across to you first up. What is the market setup looking like today?
Well, the market setup is on expected lines, if I can say that, especially considering the week that we had. Now imagine this, we hit a record high, we fall the most in 4 years in a single day, and then we lose 30 lakh crores in a session and then recover all of that in the next 3 sessions. That just happened in a span of 1 week. Now for indices that fell over almost 4 to 8% in a single trading session, now ended the week with gains of anywhere between 3 to 4%. That was the market last week, 2,000 point trading range on the Nifty, ending almost 4% higher. The Nifty Bank, though, was a slight underperformer. We speak about that in just a bit, but the PSUs are the one losing. The PSE index, which fell almost 15% on Tuesday, was ended the week almost 2% lower. So that will be the one in focus as well. For the Nifty, some of the levels that you need to watch out for: 23,338, which was the record high. It came within 20 points of that on Friday. So that will be the first level to watch out for. Of course, once you cross that, of course, 23,400 and 500 also are some of the key resistance points on the upside. So the Nifty Bank, as I mentioned, was an underperformer last week, still ended 2% higher for the week, but in comparison to the Nifty and the other indices was an underperformer, still around 1,300 points away from its own record high. The first level, of course, will be 50,000. It ended 200 points below that level, so that would be the one to watch out for as well. Also watch out for IT stocks, because IT was one of the outperformers on Friday as well. All through last week, the index was up almost 9%, so we'll keep an eye out on that. Also, IT will be in focus because of the large block deal that will take place in Emphasis today. Some of the major cues now are out of the way. The government formation has taken place. The RBI policy is also out of the way. The focus will be back on stock-specific activity. And, of course, the major cue will be the FOMC result decision later in this week. So the U.S. markets ended on a slightly cautious note on Friday, but the GIFT Nifty is also indicating a flat start, but with a negative bias for our own markets.
Okay, all right. That is the market setup. Thank you so much for that. Now, over to Vamakshi. She will list out all the stocks that are on our radar today. Good morning, Vamakshi.
Well, good morning, Sona. Let me first start off with Adani Enterprises. Its wholly owned subsidiary Adani Airports has handled over 1 million tons of cargo in FY24, which is an uptick of almost 7% YOY. Suprajit Engineering has signed a share and asset purchase agreement for the acquisition of the business of Stahlschmidt Cable Systems, and this is out of insolvency proceedings in Germany at an enterprise value of 13.5 million euros. Raymond will be undertaking the redevelopment of a society in Bandra East, and the project is expected to have a revenue potential of over 2,000 crores. Suzlon, on the other hand, could be under pressure after its independent director has resigned, citing some corporate governance issues. Coromandel International has unveiled a nano fertilizer plant at Andhra Pradesh with an annual capacity of nearly 2 million tons of fertilizers. Godavari Power and Nispat, a board meeting is scheduled to happen on 15 June. The company will be considering a buyback. PTC India reported a rather lackluster set of numbers, with revenue down nearly 2% and the net profit was down nearly 47%, and this was mainly on account of an exceptional operating expense at 20.5 crores in Q4. Jubilant Pharmova has announced completion of the US FDA audit of its contract manufacturing facility in Washington with 3 observations, while Dr. Reddy's has announced that US FDA has completed the GMP inspection at its API manufacturing facility in Andhra Pradesh. They've been issued a Form 83 with 4 observations. Ami Organics, on the other hand, its unit that is situated in Surat has received a certificate with 0 critical observations, while KEC has received new orders worth almost 1,061 crores. RVNL JV has emerged as the lowest bidder for a project worth almost 156 crores from Southern Railway. RailTel has received work orders worth almost 81 crores. IDBI has received an order from the Income Tax Department for a refund of almost 2,701 crores, and the bank is in the process of evaluating the implications of this order on the financial statements. And lastly, let's also watch out for Gulshan Polyols. The grain-based ethanol plant in Assam has passed all quality control parameters while conducting the trial run. Commercial production is also expected to start shortly after receiving compliances with oil marketing companies over the next 15 days.
Okay, that is a long list. Thank you so much, Vamakshi, for getting us up to speed with that. Let me go across to Mangalam finally. He's joining in with all the cues from the F&O space. Good morning, Mangalam.
Good morning. So give and take all the volatility of last week, the market's still near record high. The Nifty just about 100 points away from a fresh high. The Nifty banked below that 50,000 mark, and on Friday it was led, of course, higher by the Nifty IT, which was up by about 3.5% undoing some of the underperformance in the earlier part of the week. A large part of that can also be attributed to a couple of factors. One, the FIs bought more than the DIIs sold, so that was net inflow in the cash markets. Secondly, we had the FIs continue to add longs in index futures and cover some short positions after near record shorting earlier in the week itself. So nearly 6,000 crore worth purchased by the FIs, 65,000 long contracts added in index futures and 30,000 short contracts covered. So as a result of which, between June 5 and June 7, you would see the FI long exposure has increased from 17% to 30%, and the net shorts have come down from 3.1 lakh contracts to just under 2 lakh contracts. So that's the power of short covering that we've seen in the last two trading sessions itself. The interesting part was the Nifty Bank underperformed. So the FIs bought around 800 crores in Nifty Bank futures, whereas 4,900 crores in Nifty futures. And it is important then for the Nifty Bank to sustain above that 50,000 mark, for the market to see a sustainable rally. The GIFT Nifty is indicating a cut of almost 40 points at the start. So for it to recover from here, one, IT has to continue to outperform from, the move that we saw on Friday. And secondly, the Nifty Bank has to conquer that 50,000 mark. For the options, the 23,300 call and the 23,200 put are both active. With the premium on that, it looks as if the street is playing for a 23,000 to 23,500 range. Also watch out for a couple of stocks, Balrampur Chini and SAIL, both of them in F&O ban. And finally, just before we let you go, SEBI has issued a consultation paper to tweak eligibility criteria for stocks to be included in F&O. They've tightened those norms. Of course, right now it's just a consultation paper. Keep an eye out on a bunch of F&O stocks which see low volumes.
Okay, we'll do that. Thank you so much, Mangalam, for joining us. So that's our Power Prep segment. We'll slip into a break. Up next, we'll get you all the cues from the commodities market. So stay tuned for that. Welcome back. Well, we spoke about equity markets and a lot of other news as well. Let's talk about commodities. Manisha Gupta is joining us as always with all the update from the commodity space. Hey Manisha, good morning.
Morning, and thank you for that, Sonal. Well, yes, commodities, the rally seems to have come to a pause after kind of gains that we saw in the month of April and May. So June clearly seems to be looking at some profit taking right now. The reason for that also is that the U.S. non-farm payroll data has come in at the highest in last 5 months at 272,000 jobs added. So that tells you that the markets are now anticipating that there would be a very low chance of a rate cut in the month of September. The one that you could see could happen in the month of November, and that's weighing onto the markets. So you have the crude oil prices, which are trading nearly at 3-week lows. We've seen prices decline by 2% in the previous week. Copper prices also are trading at a 1-month lows. We saw prices decline 4.5% in the previous week. And similar is the case for gold and silver, where both of these commodities are trading at a 1-month lows. Gold is now trading below 2,300, and silver as well has broken below $30 an ounce in Asia right now.
Okay, all right. So that's what's happening in the commodity markets. Profit taking is what it seems to be the case here. Thank you so much, Manisha, for joining us as always. In a tragic incident, 10 people were killed and 33 injured after a bus carrying pilgrims was attacked by terrorists and plunged into a gorge in Jammu and Kashmir's Raisi last evening. The bus was on its way to the Shiv Khori cave temple when it came under attack. According to the police, the Resistance Front, an offshoot of Lashkar-e-Taiba, has claimed responsibility for the attack. Okay, with that, let's move on and focus the T20 World Cup. India pulled off a great escape against Pakistan last night to continue their dominance in ICC tournaments. Batting first, the Indians were bowled out for 119 runs as Naseem Shah and Haris Rauf took 3 wickets each. Chasing Pakistan looked comfortable placed at the midway mark, but an excellent 3-wicket haul by Jasprit Bumrah and a couple of wickets by Hardik Pandya put the brakes on Pakistan's run chase and restricted them to a total of 113 runs in 20 overs. Okay, all right. On that positive note, let's take your leave on this edition of Breakfast. But do stay tuned. Bazaar Morning Call comes up next with all the market action.